Let's have a quick chat about crazy characters. The other day, I was working on one of my stories and I came across the opportunity to write a different perspective. Typically, my work is written in a single perspective per chapter. I don't like switching back and forth. I get that that's a modern style of writing, like a TV scene changes every 15, 20 seconds. People get bored, so they got a scene change every 2 seconds. I'm not particularly a fan of those quick cut camera angle changes in written or audio stories. I understand their utility in a screenplay, but when you're writing a book, it can be a little bit jarring. Typically, I'll keep a single perspective per chapter. The reason I keep the single perspective per chapter is because I find that it's a smoother read. At the conclusion of one of my stories, I am switching the perspective to a different character. Character is a female demon. We want to get her perspective because she segues into the continuation of the story. Basically, she is the epilogue perspective as we enter into the abyss beyond the story. Because she is a demon as a character in the story, she is effectively a psychopath. She doesn't get the good emotion kind of stuff, so gratitude is not something she understands. The character is effectively a nut job from a human perspective, and she's nuts for a reason. As we're writing through this character, I can either describe and tell you she's a borderline psychopath narcissist, or we can show it through dialogue and her inner monologue, which is much more effective. If I tell you so-and-so's a psychopath, you're going to laugh at me. If I just let you deal with the psychopath, you're going to come back to me and say, that person's a psychopath. I don't want to work with him anymore. You've made your own decision. You've experienced it. You've been shown that the person's a psychopath. It's a much more effective form of storytelling. When this crazy little female demon, we move into her perspective, she very quickly shows that she's not right in a human perspective. If I'm writing a crazy character, there's basically two ways I can show that character. From that crazy character's point of view and from the point of view of people viewing that character. I've used it before in a prior video. There's a guy who is on the corner near where I live, and he was hands in armpits clucking like a chicken at a stop sign because he was whacked out. We obviously don't know what's going on inside the guy's head. I just see a grown man with his hands in his armpits clucking like a chicken and pecking his nose into a stop sign. It's pretty obvious. I have been shown as a viewer in the story of my own life that this dude's nuts. I probably don't want to bring him into my life as a supporting character because he's freaking nuts. I can show you that in the story by quickly and simply describing it. I put that crazy female demon character into the story. I can narrate from her perspective. As she's having that inner monologue, as she's arguing with people, as she's having that contest of wills with people, you're going to have a different set of morality playing out during her conversations. Different things are going to motivate her, and she's going to have those different conversational pieces that she's going to accentuate. She's going to have bursts of anger because she doesn't understand that you don't have to be jealous just because somebody else exists. Those kinds of little things. You can have a lot of fun working through a crazy character. The more time I'm spending writing this crazy character, and she's kind of the epilogue for the whole book series, the more I'm understanding my primary characters. Those primary characters' interactions are going to be similar because they're in similar situations as the crazy female demon we're using to close out and epilogue the book. It feels like the more I go through and work this crazy character, the more I am understanding the crazy character because she becomes that much more real. If you can string that together along with her thoughts and objections and what she is doing as reactions to certain stimuli, and you see it from her perspective, it goes back to the very first meeting in the very first chapter for our main character when he runs into this crazy demon's mother. You begin to understand that downward spiral, how that ended that guy's life, and then the recovery later on into the story. It fleshes out the first 2-3 chapters by describing the mother's perspective from the daughter's first person view, which is a little bit of a twisted way to say it, so sorry about that. We're using the daughter's perspective to explain the mother's point of view as seen in the first person perspective from our character. Because I am maintaining perspective throughout the story, and I'm telling the story from the perspective of one character. Following the Alexandre Dumas style, there's consistency throughout the chapters in the perspective as who's showing what. I'm not jumping between the two characters as they interact. I'm maintaining the single character's perspective until the very end with this epilogue, with this crazy daughter. I can tell you that she's a nut job, or I can let her show you that she's a nut job because she's a demon and she's lacking the positive, good side emotion kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun writing this character as a capstone to the story. It seems like her character arc, as she's getting snatched out into the epilogue, is filling in a lot of blanks. There's familial relationships. As those relationships are filled in through this perspective of the crazy demon daughter, it's doing some interesting things closing out the story. Those are the thoughts for today about crazy characters. It's been a lot of fun writing this nutsy character because it's allowed me to fill in a lot of gray space and pieces that you would have had to have guessed at. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.